this time. You read them in stltoday.com. You read them on the hometown newspaper that shows up on your stoop. And, of course, he's with us every Tuesday, Thursday. Good morning, Tony.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Do I get the tickets?
No, you're only caller number one. Sorry, you missed out.
Oh,
all right, there you go.
This is very. I never win anything.
So Prop P passes 60-40 in the city. I think a lot of people were surprised that it passed. A lot of people were surprised that it passed that much, and people were surprised when they saw the breakouts of the wards. The wards where it passed and the 2 or 3 where it failed. What are your thoughts as you watch this story?
I wasn't particularly surprised that it passed. I thought it was going to either narrowly pass or narrowly fail. But I was surprised by the number. I think 60-40 is a fairly big number, and it's a big enough number that it gives the mayor something that she didn't have after her own election and hasn't had since, and that's a little bit of momentum. She got pretty widely praised for her choice of new public safety director Jimmy Edwards, and obviously she was pushing Prop P and gets the win and gets it on a big number, and so now all eyes are on her for her police chief's choice and see if she can continue that momentum. The challenge, the part of winning the election that becomes a little bit of a loss is that it makes it even a little bit harder for her to connect with the progressive wing of the party. The police chief choice is really going to matter there. And then you're going to have all these lawsuits from the kettling protest and that sort of thing, and that has a potential for taking away some of that momentum, depending on what comes out in those lawsuits and who's the next police chief and all of that. So,
but Tony, if the progressive wing of the party doesn't have any power and doesn't show up to vote, why should the mayor listen to that wing of the party if they don't have any power?
Well, because very, very few times do you actually have votes in which it's just a binary choice in the city of St. Louis. Usually you're talking about having to build a coalition of multiple people to get the votes. And that's where the election is good for her. It won almost everywhere. And in a couple of the wards that it lost in, the aldermen were actually neutral. They weren't taking an official position. So it's an interesting election, both in terms of how the progressive wing reacts to it and as well as how the mayor reacts to it. It's clearly a win for her, and it's a win all over, and that shouldn't surprise people. Crime has been on the top of everybody's mind for the last several years, particularly the last couple of years in St. Louis, and folks don't like crime in their neighborhoods, and so they wanted cops to get a raise. I mean, it's interesting that the Ethical Police Society, which represents a lot of police officers, but majority African-American police officers, they supported Prop P, even though they've also been very critical of their own department as it relates to race issues, as it relates to dealing with protesters and dealing with the protests in general. Because, you know what? They're cops, and they want raises, and they want to make sure that they can stay in the city and not have to go out to the county. And so it's an interesting result, and I think the proof, in terms of whether or not it actually gives the mayor momentum, is going to come in implementation in a few months.
Yeah, but
a lot of that's going to relate to who she chooses as the next police chief.
But even the most staunch protester, the most upset person, would want a police department that is well-trained, well-paid, and worth it, right? And so how do you get quality policemen and women? You pay them a salary commensurate with other in the region. And so I never understood why there was a faction, the Tashara Jones of the world and some of these aldermen who refused to take a stand, who wouldn't be in favor of a police force that is well-paid and well-compensated.
Well, there's two reasons. One, a lot of people opposed it purely because it's a regressive sales tax. I mean, the same reason that when I was editorial page editor, I opposed, I believe it was called Amendment 7. It was the statewide transportation tax, not because I don't want highways and transit and all of that, but because it was the wrong tax to put the tax on poor people while the state was also cutting corporate taxes. It was backwards political philosophy. And so some people opposed it purely because it's a sales tax. They want cops to have a raise, but they think it's the wrong way to do it. Others, I know if you read what Treasurer Jones said about her opposition, a lot of it has to do with priorities and political power. She didn't want to see police rewarded now. She would rather see there be a political shift in which the reform happens first and then they get rewarded. Of course, that's not going to happen now. That Prop P passed, and it passed overwhelmingly. And so now the question becomes, does the momentum for reform continue? Is the mayor on board, as she has said, endorsing some of the elements of the Ferguson Commission to implement this reform while also giving raises to the police officers? That's why there was some opposition. Clearly it wasn't widespread, and the opposition didn't have much funding. But it's not hard to understand why people opposed a sales tax hike. St. Louis is going to have amongst the highest sales taxes in the country for a municipality, and the poor are going to pay that price.
Yeah. Tony Messenger, stay tuned. It's never dull around here. STLtoday.com, and every Tuesday and Thursday with us. Tony, have a good day.